And joining me in studio now is my first guest, Mr. Riggs Eckelberry. He's the CEO of Origin Oil Incorporated, stock symbols OOIL. Riggs, good to see you again.
A pleasure, always.
Riggs, we're reinitiating coverage of your company this week. A lot of new information to talk about. We'll start, of course, with what the company does. You have a technology that basically cultivates algae for use as a biofuel source. Why don't you tell us about that again?
Exactly. Algae has a tremendous promise because obviously it once was the feedstock that became petroleum that you're burning today. Now, the potential is for it to grow on an industrial scale throughout the world and to be a cost competitor to petroleum. Now, there are technology barriers, and so we founded our company specifically to address those barriers and to create processes that could be duplicated throughout the world to grow algae.
Once algae is an acceptable raw material, so to speak, is the process to convert it to biofuel pretty much the same as, say, using corn or wheat?
Exactly right. There are lots of accepted processes for taking biomass, gasifying it, taking the oils, as they do now with canola oil, for example, and turning those into diesel or refining it. All those processes exist. Really, the challenge is further back at the growth, the feeding the growth and extraction of the algae, which needs to be turned from an agricultural activity, which is pretty slow and relatively expensive per gallon, to something that's highly efficient and looks more like a brewery.
Well, you know, you've been getting a fair amount of media coverage lately. We talked previously in another program about you being on Fox Business News. Of course, we've been watching your company here for a few months here at Money TV. And the magazine Biofuels Digest named your company as one of the top 50 bioenergy companies. Tell us about that.
Well, we were amazed to hear that because, of course, we're still a development company, and there are literally thousands of biofuels companies in the world. But the Digest believed that our specific technology focus is essential to algae being resolved. You can have a lot of algae production companies, but if they don't have technology, then they will never get cost competitive. And so they recognize that somebody's got to be in there dedicated to that proposition.
Company's Origin Oil Incorporated, stock symbols OOIL. For more information, call us from anywhere in the world, 888-259-4449 to get free information in the mail. Now, Riggs, we were talking before we went on the air, and you mentioned to me that there's something now called an Algae Index, which didn't exist, say, 5-6 months ago, and now it's being looked at as an industry sector. Tell us about that.
Well, yes, just the other day, an independent site that tracks stocks decided that there really was a segment called Algae Industry, and that it's a basket of companies. Most of them are, of course, early stage like us, and even earlier stage. But some of them are very large. Chevron and Shell are part of that list. And so they created what they called an Algae Index, which it's really just a conceit at this point. But it says, something we didn't have back in '07 when we launched, right, which was there was no such thing as industrial algae back then. Today it's a segment. It's got some big players. It's got some producers, and it's got a technology player. And we think it's a big predictor of the future.
Well, of course, even the Empire State Building started with a ground floor.
That's very good. In fact, a basement.
That's exactly right. Now, you've talked before about the process of daily cultivation of algae to create essentially a reliable source of raw material for biofuel production. Can you walk us through that again?
Yes. Early this last fall, we announced some of the production numbers that we'd achieved in the laboratory on a single growth basis, and those numbers were deemed very favorable by a prominent algae researcher in Japan. But that's one time. That's like an engine turning over once.
Right.
That's, you can control it, you can get it just right, but those don't represent ongoing production. Algae is capable of explosive growth every single day. Call it a bloom. So it blooms daily, harvest it, and you get this daily harvest, and potentially it can grow 10 times every single day. Wow. So if you can get that going as a chain reaction, literally, then you've got something incredibly productive that can actually become a fuel.
That's incredible. Now, of course, all of this has to involve tremendous intellectual property on your part. What has the company done so far to protect that?
We've filed 6 patents so far, large and small, and we have more in the works. We continue to actively invent in various areas that are problem solution areas in the algae production process, both in terms of the basic ways to grow and extract algae, and also the ways to build it out and create the industrial environments that are needed. So that's a continuing thing that we've really started in 2007 right out of the door. We actually had a first filing, and that's continued.
Origin Oil, OOIL is their stock symbol. Again, our toll-free number from anywhere in the world is 888-259-4449 to get free information in the mail. Now, Riggs, we use petroleum in the world for so many different things, not only as a fuel, but in manufacturing and production. Can oil that is created from algae or biofuel, can it be used for all the things or many of the things that we use oil for today?
It's a vegetable oil. We call algae, crude without the tar. And as such, you can get out of that oil, you can get solvents, plastics, the middle distillates like kerosene and diesel. You can get gasoline. You're not going to get tar, but that's probably okay for petroleum to continue supplying. And at the same time, you've got the biomass that's left over after the oil is extracted. And that in turn can be gasified and in turn turn into a liquid fuel as well.
Wow. Wow. Now, you just have to think that if we have, you have this vision. We've talked about this vision that you have of municipalities and entrepreneurs all over the place creating algae on a daily basis, providing a raw material for biofuel production. I mean, it would just seem that this is like a perfect answer for, energy independence, whether it's the United States or any other country.
Exactly. You know that we spend more for petroleum abroad than we spend on our own Defense Department. Yeah. And that is a vast amount of money, and the Obama administration has recognized that it is a source of up to 30 million jobs in the next 2 decades in the U.S. alone. It's the single largest source of jobs potentially in the United States today, and it's true all over the world. We can repatriate all those petroleum dollars into local communities. Now, what does that mean? We need to share this knowledge quickly on a global basis, rather than just saying, okay, we're going to build it and then ship it out, and it goes up, boom, 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 and 30 years later it gets to Pakistan. No,
we don't
let's share the knowledge. Let's have the partners in Pakistan, Indonesia, Germany, everywhere, who will then take our knowledge and locally invest, build, sell, and produce algae for energy. And I think that's ultimately the solution.
Of course, the technology exists today to use algae as a raw material for biofuel, correct?
Of course.
It's just like using wheat or corn.
Well, the technology, first of all, we've been trying to make algae since the 50s.
Okay.
In fact, one of the key discoveries that algae liked red light was made in 1884.
Wow.
So algae production has been around for a long time, but it's never been scaled up on this cost competitive basis. We now know that. The next step is to create what we call the plug-in applications for industry, so that algae has a role, for example, in a factory setting where a lot of CO2 is being pushed out due to their use of natural gas, and we take that CO2, absorb it with the algae, which lives off CO2, and then we gasify the algae to put right back in to feed the furnaces. Now there's a beautiful plug-in application for industry that can happen right away, and this year we plan to start working with our industrial partners to create those applications.
Of course, you mentioned the Obama administration, and they're very bullish on, of course, alternative energy, alternative energy methods, but also on green energy. Are there any environmental concerns with respect to algae cultivation?
Well, algae cultivation, of course, is going to require, especially if it's industrialized, will require added energy because we're using artificial methods. Mm-hmm. We will absolutely use the free energy of the sun,
of course,
or of the elements to provide this supplemental power that the algae systems will need. You take there's no free lunch. You're going to go ahead and light the algae and pumps and heaters and chillers and so forth. We plan to have it be very efficient and very productive, but it will always have a small energy deficit, and that will be overcome probably by having simple solar arrays to provide that supplementary energy.
Okay. Now, here we are, beginning of 2009. We've been looking at your company here for a little while. You're talking about all these things that are falling into place. Why is this a good time right now for people to take a closer look at Origin Oil?
Well, this is the beginning of an industry, and there are very few ways for folks to invest in this industry. Many of the players are still private, and you would need to be a member of the Rockefeller Fund or Bill Gates to invest, whereas there's a small number of public companies, Original being, we think, a very good one, that allow people an opportunity to be part of this wonderful thing and to contribute to our efforts to transform the whole energy picture worldwide through this low capital, high efficiency industrial process.
You know, it's interesting, Riggs, because your company really is what Money TV is all about. We like to look into a crystal ball into the future, and we look at small companies like yours, and I just really enjoy having you in the program, having your company in the program. As I mentioned, we're reinitiating coverage of the company, be following you very closely for the next 3 months. Looking forward to your weekly updates. Thanks for joining us again.
We're very excited. Thank you so much, Don.